Freedom isn't a feeling, it's a system you build on purpose. You know what nobody tells you about freedom? That you can't hustle your way into it? I recently had the privilege of sitting down with Toyicha Chisom, a visionary who's redefining what it means to live fully liberated, not just financially, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and in the deepest chambers of self love. Toyicha's work is transforming lives across continents, helping people break free from invisible chains they didn't even know they were wearing. They're creating movements, shifting paradigms, and building pathways for those who've been told their wholeness is impossible. And what they shared with me, it's the kind of wisdom that doesn't just inspire, it restructures your entire operating system. Because here's the thing, most of us are walking around thinking we're free. We've got the job, the degrees, maybe even the business. We're checking boxes, hitting milestones, showing up. But underneath all that achievement, we're exhausted. We're running on fumes. We're one boundary violation away from a breakdown. And we keep telling ourselves, once I get this promotion, once I pay off this debt, once I finally prove myself, then I'll rest. Spoiler alert, that day never comes. Because freedom, real freedom, isn't a destination you arrive at after you've earned enough gold stars. It's not a reward for good behavior or a prize for surviving long enough. Freedom is holistic, it's intentional, and it requires you to stop treating your life like a game of whack a mole, fixing one area while three others fall apart. Toyicha Chisom taught me this: you can't build financial breakthroughs on a foundation of scarcity thinking. You can't find spiritual alignment while drowning in emotional chaos. You can't sustain physical health when your mind is at war with itself. Freedom isn't about perfecting one piece of the puzzle, it's about integrating all the layers: mind, spirit, emotions, body, finances, self love, so they work together, not against you. And that integration, that's where the magic happens. That's where peace lives. That's where power becomes sustainable instead of performative. Let me tell you about some people who figured this out the hard way. During the pandemic, there were these incredible Black women in London who had built artisanal food brands rooted in African and Caribbean heritage. These weren't just businesses, they were legacies, cultural expressions, dreams wrapped in spices and tradition. And then overnight, their entire business model collapsed. No foot traffic, disrupted supply chains, lockdown uncertainty that felt like it might never end. They could have given up. They could have said, this is too much. The world is against us. We're done. But here's what they did instead: they rewired everything. They didn't just pivot their business strategy, they pivoted their identity. From local vendors to global innovators, from survival mode to systems mode, they shifted to digital platforms, adopted delivery models, leaned into social media engagement. They built peer networks to access grants and joint ventures. They weren't just reacting to the crisis, they were building systems in the middle of it: mental rewiring, spiritual alignment with community, financial structuring and chaos, and the outcome: remarkable recovery, expanded markets, thriving online storefronts that celebrated their heritage while reaching audiences they never imagined. They proved that systems beat survival every single time. They enriched London's cultural fabric, inspired the next generation of Black entrepreneurs, and modeled what inclusive growth looks like when you refuse to let one crisis define your entire existence. That's mental freedom. That's spiritual alignment. That's financial structuring when everything around you is falling apart. That's what holistic freedom looks like when you refuse to stay stuck. Or consider the Black tech entrepreneurs in Canada who launched apps tailored for underserved communities in healthcare and retail. Post pandemic economic barriers, underrepresentation in tech funding, the emotional toll of innovating in isolation in spaces that weren't built for them. in industries that tried to exclude them at every turn. They could have burned out, they could have quit, they could have said, "This isn't for us." But instead, they leveraged financial literacy to diversify their income streams. They built spiritual, purpose driven networks for mentorship. They created emotional boundaries through peer support. They aligned mind, body, and strategy, not as separate projects, but as one integrated approach to building something that mattered. The result? They redefine entire innovation sectors. They achieve stability over hustle. They show the world that when you break scarcity mindsets and claim authority in spaces that try to exclude you, you don't just succeed, you transform the landscape. They reinvented tech and healthcare for inclusivity, boosted Black innovation nationwide, and proved that structured alignment yields ownership, not just opportunity. And then there are the Black women entrepreneurs in Canada who launched enterprises across culture and economy at unprecedented rates. They faced systemic barriers, burnout from overgiving, identity doubts in competitive spaces that constantly questioned their worth. But they chose something radical. They embraced healing boundaries. They invested in financial strategies like asset education. They pursued spiritual alignment for purpose clarity. They rejected survival narratives and chose integrated wholeness instead. And their enterprise didn't just survive, they exploded with cultural influence, turning personal alignment into economic powerhouses. They proved that self love isn't selfish, it's strategic. They heightened Black women's economic clout, inspired boundary setting, and showed the world what holistic success in business actually looks like. These stories aren't anomalies, they're blueprints. And the common thread, none of these people waited until everything was perfect to start building freedom. They started where they were with what they had, and they built systems, not just solutions. Because here's what Toyicha Chisom made crystal clear: mental freedom is the foundation of everything else. You can have all the money in the world, but if your mind is still running scripts from childhood trauma, generational fear, or imposter syndrome, you'll sabotage every opportunity that comes your way. You'll undercharge. You'll overwork. You'll say yes when you mean no. You'll build a life that looks successful on paper but feels like a prison. Most of our limits aren't external, they're internal. They're the narratives we've been telling ourselves for so long, we don't even question them anymore. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve rest. If I stop hustling, I'll lose everything. If I set a boundary, they'll leave. Those thoughts, they're not truth, they're bondage. And the only way out is to rewrite the script, to turn your mind into an ally through discipline, emotional regulation, and self trust, to stop letting fear run the show and start letting clarity lead. And once you've done that internal work, once you've started to reclaim your mental freedom, then you can build the systems that sustain it. Systems over survival. That's the mantra, that's the shift, because survival is reactive. Systems are proactive. Survival is exhausting. Systems are sustainable. Survival keeps you stuck in the same cycles. Systems set you free. What does that look like practically? It looks like financial literacy that goes beyond budgeting. It's understanding taxes, assets, leverage, ownership. It's building wealth, not just income. It's making your money work for you instead of you working yourself into the ground for money. It looks like spiritual discernment, knowing who and what deserves access to your energy, building community with intention, aligning your purpose with your daily actions. So you're not just busy, you're building something that matters. It looks like healing boundaries, not the kind that make you feel guilty, the kind that protect your peace without apology, the kind that say, I love you and I'm still saying no, the kind that recognize rest isn't laziness, it's resistance against a culture that profits from your exhaustion. It looks like physical sustainability, honoring your body's need for movement, nourishment, sleep, not as a luxury, but as a non negotiable, because you can't lead, create, or love from an empty vessel. And it looks like self love that isn't just affirmations in the mirror, it's the daily practice of choosing yourself, of refusing to shrink, of celebrating your wins without waiting for permission, of knowing that your worth isn't tied to your productivity. This is what Toyicha Chisom is teaching the world. This is the freedom they're modeling. And it's the freedom every single one of us deserves, not someday, not after we've earned it, but right now. So here's my challenge to you. This week, audit one layer of your freedom, just one. Pick mental, spiritual, financial, emotional, physical, or self love. Identify your biggest bondage in that area. Maybe it's a scarcity thought that keeps you playing small. Maybe it's a weak boundary that's draining your energy. Maybe it's a financial habit that's keeping you stuck. And then build one intentional system around it: a daily narrative rewrite, a tax strategy review, a nervous system rest ritual, something small, something doable, something that moves you from reaction to intention. Track it for 7 days. Watch how it ripples into the other areas of your life, because freedom isn't built in one grand gesture. It's built in the small, consistent choices that compound over time. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. You have to decide that you're worth the effort, that your peace matters, that your wholeness is non negotiable, because the world doesn't need another version of you running on empty. The world doesn't need you burned out, barely surviving, calling exhaustion strength. The world needs you free, whole, rested, aligned, powerful in a way that's sustainable, not performative. And that starts with you choosing yourself today, right now, in this moment. Freedom isn't a feeling, it's a system you build on purpose. And you, my friend, are more than capable of building it. You were built for this. You were built for freedom. And it's time to stop surviving and start thriving on your terms, in your time, with your whole self leading the way. So go ahead, take that first step. Audit that one layer, build that one system, and watch how everything starts to shift, because you deserve to live free, not just dream about it. And the world is waiting for the fullness of who you are when you're no longer carrying weight that was never yours to hold.